It's great to see the audience here, the packed audience, and I'm really, really very privileged and honored to have esteemed panel here for the topic of the day, which is the way forward with new age DPIs. And like Ansha said, I'm very sure the term DPIs and DPGs is not alien to the audience here, but a very quick show of hands would help. Is everybody familiar with what we mean when we say digital public infrastructures or DPIs? I see very few hands up, surprisingly. Okay, so very quickly, before we go into what is new age DPIs, a quick recap. So even before the term DPI was coined, India had embarked on its DPI journey more than a decade ago with Aadhaar, which was our first DPI, and a foundational DPI for digital identity, which unlocked massive financial impact. So it was not about the ID per se, but what can you do with a unique digital identity. And I won't go into the numbers and details, can look up all of it, but very quickly to talk about it being the first wave. And then we moved on to the second wave, the second significant wave, which was the area of payments, basically UPI, which put India on top of the digital payments landscape in the world. I mean, literally everybody uses UPI today and is familiar with it. And all of these foundational DPIs went on to show what building for population scale can do. And that is what digital public infrastructure is all about. A technology-led approach to building for population scale that basically enables access and inclusion at speed. I know that's a lot of words, but that's exactly what all of these DPIs have delivered. And now we are at the cusp of the third wave or the current wave, which is the new age DPIs, which is what we've been talking about in the first half. How do you enable a way of transaction interoperability using open networks based on an open transaction protocol like Beckn? And how does that solve problems old and new in areas of commerce, mobility, education, skilling, healthcare, agriculture, climate action? I mean, there is no sector that you can name that a protocol like Beckn can't solve. But we are here to talk and understand and learn from the esteemed panelists here about what their journeys have been with emerging DPIs in these areas, and what can we learn from them. So without much ado, I would like to first introduce the panelists, and this is how the panel format would go. I'll start with Vibhor. Vibhor Jain probably needs no introduction. Vibhor is President, Network Governance and COO for ONDC. He has 2 decades of experience in entrepreneurship and consulting, and expertise in designing and delivering technology-driven population-scale transformation programs. He has been driving strategy and operations for ONEST, and is a proponent of unbundling the commerce value chain to enable transition from the current platform-centric model to an open network-based approach. He has had leadership and entrepreneurial roles in Jumo World, which is a fintech platform serving the underserved. CEO of Mobile in India, which is the world's largest smart bike sharing company, and Atlanta Healthcare. He's been a consultant with Addison and EY for over a decade, and worked closely with governments across geographies, including India, the Middle East, Africa, and Southeast Asia, advising them on public policy and large-scale technology-driven transformations across sectors. Bertram Dsouza, Bert, the Chief Product and Innovation Officer at Protean eGov Technologies Limited. He's a recognized leader in the fintech industry with over 22 years of experience in digital payments, open banking, and financial inclusion space. And since his joining Protean 2 years ago, he's played a key role in creating and scaling technology-enabled business solutions, driving the vision, strategy, and execution of open digital ecosystem, digital identity, and data services, launching and scaling new product lines for Protean in India and in global markets. In addition to his role as the CPIO, he serves as the CEO of Protean's Account Aggregator subsidiary, which is another revolutionary DPI that enables secure and consent-based data sharing between financial institutions and customers. He has held leadership positions at Kotak Mahindra Bank, Vodafone M-Pesa, TCPSL, Worldline, and Kia AI. He's passionate about being at the cusp of technology and business and building for population scale and creating social impact. Welcome to the panel, Bert. Gaurav Gupta, the Chief Growth Officer at EkStep Foundation. He has been instrumental in working with the government to scale Diksha, which is the world's largest government-backed school education platform and India's first DPI in education. He is now leading the effort on ONEST, which is the Open Network for Learning and Livelihoods. That is not the expansion of the acronym, and I would encourage you to look it up. Gaurav is passionate about solving large-scale societal problems, leveraging technology. He's a business leader and an ecosystem and growth architect with more than 23 years of cross-functional experience across several industries and geographies. He's a startup guy and has played a significant role in the growth journey of many startups and new initiatives of large organizations. And happy to note he's an alumnus of XLRI Jamshedpur like myself, and has held leadership positions at Flipkart, Accenture Management Consulting, and Marketix. So that's the esteemed panel we have here. And now I would ask the panelists to introduce their DPI journeys in the organizations they represent. An overview for the audience to understand where you're from, the organizations you represent. Over to you, Vibhor.
Thanks. So I think ONDC, as Pramod mentioned initially this chat, focuses on democratizing commerce. And when I said commerce, as CEO already mentioned, anything that requires exchange of economic value between two transacting parties. It could be cut across multiple domains. I think it's left for your imagination in terms of what those domains could be, from retail to mobility to agri to travel. I mean, just think of it, and I think that's what we do. As I speak, obviously, the network is growing, sort of incubating more and more domains and categories across the network. This is a sort of, a benchmark or a number. So the network did almost some 7.3 million transactions in the month of February 2024. So from where we were doing almost like 10,000 transactions Jan last year, this February we did approximately 7.3 million transactions. So they can also put on to say, I think, Sujit spoke about the forest, right? I think that's the sort of, scale at which the forests can grow or scale up. And I think exponentially, I think that's where the network effect really come in. So something, we'll talk more. Just
thank you, Vibhor.
Thanks, Sindhuja. I think a quick introduction to Protean. A lot of people would know Protean as the erstwhile NSCL eGov. My journey and also see the journey of Protean has been quite enriching in the last couple of years. Protean started as a company which got a mandate from the government back in 95-96. Very quick backstory: to set up the first repository and to dematerialize paper to digital form. With that mandate in hand and building the first repository, which we all know as NSDL today, there were a number of other large national scale projects that Protean took on, like the issuance of PAN cards, the setup of the largest CRA for the NPS and Atal Pension Yojana. And some of these were running at immense scale. Until in 2030, we were asked to split vertically the repository from our, parent company. So today, the depository, as we all know, NSDL is a separate organization. We have no relationship in terms of holding either way. And the technology company which remained was called NSDL eGov, which now got a new name change to Protean. So the reason for the change in name and also in terms of our direction, strategy, and vision is to say some of this large-scale, population-scale impacting e-governance, digital enabling projects, including Aadhaar authentication and a lot of the Aadhaar enabling stack, is something which we looked back and said, can we now leap forward? So what's going to happen in the next 5 years? And I think one of the pivotal points for us was when I think Sujit and I think at that point of time, Ramon, had reached out and there was a pilot for the Kochi mobility, which was being done in Kochi, Kerala for KOMN. And NSCL was one of the likely candidates to set up the first Beckn gateway and to see how this technology worked. And that's where it all started for us. So when we had a role to play in this first pilot of Beckn, its history, the next was when ONDC got set up, it was formed. And some of that experience for us also helped to to run the gateway for ONDC, which we continue to do today. So I think looking at our strategy for multiple sectors beyond just commerce, and like Vibhor called out, there are so many sectors and so many segments or areas and, target segments of audiences which can be served using open technology. We realize that the government's vision is also very much aligned there. I think looking at the digitization drive that's happened in the last decade, as we all call it, there's a lot of opportunity to go and digitize sector by sector, and that's pretty much the new focus for us going forward. So whether it's the education sector and the role we are playing in ONEST and education and skill, or whether it is the agriculture sector where we have recently supported the Ministry of Agriculture to set up something called as the Agri Stack, or whether it's an account aggregator, like I said, where we are playing the role of a consent manager. There are multiple such roles which we are embedding ourselves in each sector, both at the infrastructure level, the way we see it as setting up the rails, and also setting up teams to build applications and innovate on top of it. Some of which we do ourselves, some of which we do through partners. So I'll just stop at that.
And so I'll keep the introduction about ONEST brief. See, ONEST is like the younger sister of ONDC. That's barely a few months old. It's just learned to sit. And if you were to poke it, you know what happens to kids, right? Default. That's where ONEST is at the moment. And it's yet to hence crawl, walk, run. That's the journey that ONEST is undertaking. But the advantage that ONEST has is that it has ONDC as partner, Protean as partner, FIDE as partner. Right? So all of these partners are helping nudge and nourish the younger sister to grow into and fulfill its potential. The intent is to focus around learning and livelihoods. That's what one is going after with us.
Thanks, Gaurav. So with that, I'll move on to the first question of the day. And Vibhor, listens to you. As a facilitator of an open network that aims to re-architect digital commerce in India, what were some of the challenges ONDC faced in onboarding network participants in the initial phase even now? And, how did you overcome that? With some specific examples so that when the audience learns.
Sure, thanks. So I think the biggest challenge is the big shift in the mental model, right? From platforms to networks. The fact that you are unbundling the entire transaction value chain, the basic questions of how will it work, what will happen, how will grievances get resolved. So a lot of those fundamental basic questions, because all of us today are so tuned to this entire mental model of platforms, it's very difficult to even visualize how what even Ravi showed in terms of the 4 building blocks can really work on the fly in real time and stitch a transaction together. I think that's the biggest sort of challenge, we have to solve for. So which meant first showcase people in a lab environment that this works. Then take it to the market and excite people enough to say, okay, we want to adopt this from a long-term perspective, because they need to see the value from a long-term perspective in terms of what's in it for them to join such a network, or what's in it for their business in terms of value and lucky that would happen. I think that basic fundamental mental model shift is the sort of, biggest challenge that we face. Obviously, which means how to solve for it? It needs a lot of communication and sometimes over-communicate, right? In terms of what these networks can unlock, what are the future use cases that even Sudhir spoke about, right? In terms of painting a world 10 years from now, how will it look like? And therefore, why should they invest at this stage to be there, to be an early adopter of such networks? What's the biggest sort of mindset model that needs to be changed? The second larger challenge is also from a policy perspective. Right? Today, if you look at all the regulations across the world, right, are very, very tuned to a platform-centric way of working. Do regulations identify that there could be multiple parties involved in a single transaction with having different set of responsibilities and roles to play, and therefore the regulations today do not recognize such networks in that sense, right? So how do you engage with the policy makers to ensure that they start to understand the new way of doing business and therefore are also sort of, walking along with you in shaping that opportunity becomes very, very critical. The third and most important piece is when you are unbundle the entire value chain, how do the commercial incentives for each of the stakeholders change, right? How do you become operationally more responsible and accountable? Because in a safe transaction, anything that you do wrong impacts others on the network as well, right? So those are pieces which people find very difficult to consume and understand that how can this really happen? Right? So how do you ensure that you are setting in some sort of commercial incentives, not in terms of payouts, but in terms of businesses realizing the value that could be really unlocked with such networks? As an example, if you look at, a live case of Namayarthi, they have completely disrupted the commercial model that exists in the mobility value chain, right? Did someone think that it could move from a commission-based model to a subscription-based model in a span of 6 months, right? So I think those are the sort of tough things to crack. And I think you therefore need a lot of evangelists, a lot of people who believe in this concept from a long-term perspective and are ready to risk it out to say, okay, we're going to champion this cause and therefore help you build this together. Because ultimately to realize that ONDC or ONEST or any of these entities are only the operator status. We are not an operator. And therefore, unless you find an ecosystem of participants who are as committed to the cause and are ready to build this together with you, it's going to be a gold star problem. So I think those are some of the real challenges that we face. And obviously, even Gaurav is faced today with ONEST. And I think those are to be solved for.
Thanks, Vibhor. That's exactly the question I want to ask Gaurav. Scale is the burning question, and carrying forward the question on challenges. Rightly said, ONEST is still a baby and growing. And maybe what were some of the learnings from the challenges faced, ONDC faced, and that is coming through to ONEST and helping? And what specific challenges is ONEST facing that you're looking at?
So let me start by saying cut and paste of what Vibhor said. So those are the obvious challenges. But beyond that, as we got on to the journey of ONEST, I think one realization that came through was that it's not just about transactions, especially when you look at education and scaling livelihoods. It's about transformation. Let me tell you a couple of small stories which are real in terms of what's happening on the ground. So Kavya is a 14-year-old. She lives in Dhong in Maharashtra, which is towards the west of Maharashtra, and her parents are, farmers. So till last year, or rather this year, she completed the grade 8 in a government school. But after that, her family told her that, look, you should drop out and probably help in the house because we don't have money for you to continue studying. Now, what Kavya or her family are not aware of is the fact that 30 kilometers away from Dhong is a place called Nandurbar. In Nandurbar, there are a bunch of players who are actually doling out scholarships for girls to continue studying after grade. But Kavya is not aware of, right? Likewise, then Soumya. Soumya just completed her Karnataka PU exams because she is based out of Kolar district. She only scored 51%. And she's from a blue-collar family. So her family told her, look, I don't think you're going to do well in education. So no point studying further. Why don't you do a job? But we don't think, with these kind of marks, anybody's going to take you. So they rather ask her to take up the job of becoming a maid for 7,000 rupees in Bangarpet, which is like a, it's just a little bit of a distance away from Kolar. Again, Soumya didn't know that in Kolar, there are electrical vehicle manufacturing, smartphone manufacturing units which are being set up, which are actually looking for young girls and women who are just 12 past. And they could have offered her a job which was 15,000 or above, and also given her a future because, there is a career path. There's no career path to becoming a maid, but there is a career path when you join a factory. There are some 15 million odd such Soumyas in the country, in the age group of 18 to 24, who are neither working nor studying, but pushed into these kind of things. If you add Kavyas to it, there are 30 million Kavyas in the country who have dropped out after grade 8. I mean, I'm talking about 14 to 18 age group, and their career and their life is withering away. If you add the boys to it, again, in the same age group, the number reaches 100 million. So there are 100 million kids in the country between the age group of 14 to 24 who neither study nor working. What do you think where the country will go with something like this? What will put them on the radar of opportunities? Opportunities that Kavya did not know about, that Soumya did not know about, but were pretty much linked to. So I think that's where the power of something like a digital profile, which is the idea of decentralized credentialing that Pramod was talking about earlier, comes into play, plugged into a network. A network which is facilitated by many seekers on the seeker side, firms on the ground, NGOs, private players like Haddarsha, Payoneer, etc. Likewise, government organizations like CSCs, so many skilling institutes, etc., who can actually bring the Kavyas and Sauvyas onto the network by creating their digital profile and using some of these simple, AI-based capabilities, the example that the team was demonstrating. So ONEST is, for example, trying to create an ONEST Sathi, which is a local language voice-based bot, which will allow the Kavyas and the Soumyas not just to find opportunities, but actually also assist them in applying to them in local language. That's the big thing that we are going after. So that's a huge challenge, and I think my request is to everyone out here in terms of how you can join the challenge, because it's not easily surmountable, but that's the real challenge that what is going on. Yes.
Thanks, Gaurav. I do have a follow-up question related to what both of you said, but I'll go down to it. But I'll just take the question, maybe this will be taken up at some other point in time. Was there some kind of a aha moment where you moved from, especially ONDC? It's always the initial cold start that is a problem. Which where you move from, say, 10 to 100, 500 bucks, and then there's somewhat of a point of no return. Not yet, but somewhat. So what was that? And maybe you try something and it didn't work, and then you try something else. So some kind of learnings from that, but I'm not asking for an answer right now, purely in the interest of time. We'll shift to slightly, a different question. But, Protean is at a unique position. I mean, in terms of open networks and DPIs, you're pretty much a player in all of the aspects. You're an infrastructure provider, DPI builder, network player as well, especially in ONEST. And just carrying forward the point Gaurav spoke about, my question is a little specific as to, in your view, what maybe needs to change or what more needs to be done to really accelerate the scale of growth.
No, that's a great question. And our interest in getting into ONEST was twofold. One is, of course, supporting a new DPI, leveraging similar technology. Beckn, again, was at the core of it. The second was today we do a lot of work in the education and edu skill and edu finance actually as a space. Today we have two large plays of platforms, one called Vidya Lakshmi, which is a education loan platform. And about a third of the education loans in the country today are actually disbursed to students to that. The challenge, again, like Gaurav touched upon, is awareness, penetration. Those are some of the obvious problems you have when it comes to platforms, even when it comes to loans. The second platform is something we have called Vidya Sarthi, completely a scholarship platform, which is funded by a lot of private CSR funds. Again, here we had a problem of more demand than supply. And what we were actually looking at as an equation year on year was we had a huge number of students coming and showing interest in applying. Either they were not meeting the eligibility criteria or they were dropping out at the screening process, or there were not enough funds to support them. So that's exactly where we saw ONEST as a perfect example of saying, hey, here's an opportunity for us to not have to do a platform play and solve for this ourselves on both sides. And Vibhor knows this only too well because he has seen how some of these problems have already taken shape in ONDC. So in the last 60 days, I would say, since we have actually been putting some of our new ideas to full throttle with Gaurav and team, we have seen a lot of change in how we ourselves understood this problem and how we were solving for it. One is we didn't have to go and find the students ourselves. Today we have partners in the network like Haftarshak who's here, we have Pay Nearby and others who put their hands up. OneBridge also is one of them, who said we will go and source students. We will come in as seekers on the network and we will go and bring in that last mile touch point to the end student. You just bring in the supply of the scholarship. So that enabled us to focus on the problem and say, hey, okay, for this period of time, we will go and get funding and make sure that these 10 schemes or 7 schemes are open for a certain window of time. And we saw fantastic traction. The second nudge which Gaurav actually helped us to do is how do we simplify the process? Today, the process was very platformish, which is you apply, it goes through step 1, step 2, step 3, sequential approvals and workflows. Here we said, can you build a process which is frictionless and permissionless? And I love those words which he coined. I give him full credit for that. And the idea of frictionless was just make it as simple as straight through and including the disbursement. It should all happen within a very finite short period of time. And the second is the permissionless, which really does not require the student to be waiting in limbo to know, will I get this or not? Will I be eligible or not? Can the checks be done right there and then? And we changed some of the entire process flows, the way our entire supply side of Vidya Sarthi was architected. And we were able to make this work. In about 30 days, we were able to disburse hundreds of scholarships in a very short period of time from informing these specific areas on the ground that we would be doing these camps. Students were targeted, brought to the locations, the documents were captured, verified, and disbursements done. So I think that's proof of the pudding where we have seen it from a ringside view that if you're able to open it up to the network effect, and we have not even got to the second step or last mile where supply is constrained from us, can we also bring in other pockets of supply? Can each of us in the room be a small supplier of a 2,000 rupees scholarship to a girl child? Because like he said, we've also studied the education ministry reports. A majority of people who drop out from education, the second highest reason is finance. And the other correlating statistic is those girls who drop out, majority of them go into domestic work. So this is an opportunity for us to actually solve something which is very systemic in taking our country forward. And I think it's a fantastic both social and a digital cause for me.
And those are great thoughts for and real impact on lives and livelihood. Over to you, Vibhor, for the second round. Beckn is going global, and I'm personally overseeing Open Network in Amsterdam, very much in the area of ONDC, hyperlocal commerce and delivery for Netherlands. So where I'm going with this is, if you had to look back and maybe do things a little differently, or if you had to start another ONDC in India, elsewhere across the world, what advice would you give? Or, like I said, what would you probably do differently or repeat the things?
That's a tough one. So I think, and I hope this is not getting recorded, so I can be open for it. So I think the good thing about, when you started out, was that there was no benchmark to what we were doing, right? And since there was no global benchmark to what we were doing, we could just be so frugal in terms of trying on everything and anything, right? Hoping that some of the things would work and some of the things will not work. So that was the starting point, right? And therefore, we said, from a strategy perspective, we said, we'll try things and maybe few of them will succeed and most of them may fail. And therefore, if I look at it from a domain perspective as an example, we started off with multiple domains as a starting point because we were not really sure where the real value unlock would happen that can get some sort of scale to the network, right? So if you want to sort of rewind and restart this, I would say we could have looked at a different approach of saying, pick up just few domains and just go deep into those domains. The challenge only with that strategy is some domains may click and the timing might be right. For some domains, the timing may not be right? Because of the level of maturity, the nature of participant that you get, the usual board of participants. So it's a tricky thing, but yes, maybe a going deep sort of a strategy in early days could have been a good one, right? what you also start realizing in a network environment, and I think especially today's, quick commerce sort of, 10-minute delivery sort of a world, people have very limited patience to seek results, right? They want instant gratification. They want to see instant outcomes of such networks, showing their true potential, right? Without realizing that any of these transformation programs take time to mature. Right? And therefore, how you are able to showcase that initial value, or at least communicate that initial value, or help people start thinking in a different way of saying what value would get unlocked in a particular domain, would be at the focus area that I would want to sort of, double click on to say, in the very initial days, how do we make people start thinking, what are they really trying to solve for on an open network? I think sometimes what happens is people just follow, okay, this is the new buzzword and let's follow it, right? Without really realizing that, okay, what could happen if I take a same food delivery transaction from a platform world to an open network world? What's the value that's getting unlocked, right? Is it about more access? Is it about wider assortment? Is it about better efficiency? Is it about, better pricing structures? What is it that you're focusing on? If you start realizing that early in the day, the level of commitment that you have towards building something, which even if it takes time to deliver on the results, becomes much more promising. So I think there's all these few things I would have done differently if I was supposed to sort of restart ONDC again. But yeah, a lot of learnings, but a lot of things we also did right. So I think getting the ecosystem activated, I think is something we did really well, right? In terms of almost 18 months back, where we should go door to door knocking and say, this is a great concept, let's talk about it. To now people coming to us and saying, hey, how can we innovate on ONDC? It's a big shift, right? I think I remember on 29th April, Sujit and some of us in this hall sitting in a war room in Bangalore to do the first transaction. And believe me when I say this, it took us full day to do one transaction, right? To get one transaction right, it took us one full day. From there, 7.3 million transactions being enabled on the network. I think it's been a journey, a lot of learnings, and I think we'll try to book for that something.
Carrying forward the point on unlocking value, I think unlocking value has to be on both sides. Right? Very related question from Gaurav on enabling skilling and livelihood opportunities on ONEST. How can ONEST unlock economic value? I'm sure that is the challenge of probably there. Another area that needs to be thought to. Yeah, the thoughts sounds.
See, actually, value can itself have many dimensions to it, right? It can just be economic value, it can be social value, it can be some other aspects of. Now, when you, for example, the examples that I was taking about Pavya and Soumya, but when you flip the equation, right, and when you say that, let's say anybody in the country is on the grid, when you flip that, let's imagine, situation from that perspective. So imagine everyone has a digital profile which captures, who am I, what I have as qualifications, and what do I really want. The moment you have that kind of a demand, you immediately unlock demand, right? That's the first thing that you do, because now you understand what do people want across different aspects, across different strata. In fact, in this context, let me take an example that Bert was talking about earlier, that typically when Bert would do a conversation with, let's say, a funder who has to be on Protean Vidyasathi scholarship platform, the funder would ask Bert, kitne aadmi hain? Almost that kind of a question. How many people do you have on the Vidyasathi platform that you can have reach to, so that I can, make sure that saturation of what I'm giving as money can happen to the rightful beneficiary in the fastest possible time. But now when you flip this, when demand discovery is available, the same funders and Bert can say, look, I'm on the network, so I can take you to all. But while taking them to all, if this is the demand that people have, can we tailor propositions accordingly, right? So it will actually lead to new product creation. And I'm just talking in the context of scholarship. It will lead to new product creation and jobs. It will lead to new product creation and how scaling happens, how mentorship happens, because all of those are spheres that ONEST touches upon. So new product creation, which leads to new value creation, is one aspect in itself. The other aspect is that, especially when you also see it from the lens of what can, what were to happen today as, reads of documents, loads of fields to be built, etc., etc. And if you were to make those things frictionless, permissionless, paperless, you've actually shifted the equilibrium. And when you shift the equilibrium of the nation as such, it means that, now transactions can happen a lot better, a lot faster. Right. So imagine, we're just, for example, just taking an example from another space that we're launching Vande Bharat trains and feeling happy about it. But imagine in the context of ONEST, there is a Vande Bharat for everyone. Right? Where with speed, you can achieve what you want to achieve. You don't have to wait for it. Now, imagine what kind of value can it unlock, because now people are equipped to do what they can and what they want at the drop of a hat. That's the power of, economic, or rather, different kinds of value that you can unlock. And of course, we all talk about the fact that with the evolution of technology, with the kind of talent that India has, how can you unlock the significant talent that India has to make it, or to allow it to achieve its real full potential? That's the opportunity.
Absolutely. Thank you, Gaurav. Bert, last question from me to you. And audience, I hope you're ready with your questions. Okay, having played a wide variety of roles and having built for $1 billion plus across areas, in being a pan issuer and so on and so forth, your advice or the top 2-3 insights or lessons that you would offer to other EI builders?
I think looking at the way the last decade has gone in terms of setting up the core infrastructure for digital, I think putting on my business hat and, putting that thought out there, the ability to do business in sachet size now is possible because it is much more cost effective. It was not possible earlier to do loans the size at which some of the digital lenders are doing today. It's possible today because you can acquire a customer digitally, you can do an e-mandate digitally, you can disperse digitally, you can collect digitally, so it's all digital. Some of what we are all building here is the underlying infrastructure for innovators like you all to find those potential opportunities in the market and unlock value and also create new behavior which may not exist today. So like I gave the example of scholarships. Today, a typical scholarship, if you ask someone who's done research, they'd say ATS, so average ticket size is 10,000 rupees, 20,000 rupees. What if we were to say that a scholarship can be 1,000 rupees or 2,000 rupees or 500 rupees? A small ticket scholarship to someone in a village for a specific, award or a certificate is possible now because it can be delivered at a fraction of cost. You don't have to worry about somebody even going there. They can walk up to the local store and have it, fulfilled. So I'm saying some of that new thinking is now possible. It's up to the collective imagination in the room. And stealing a, keyword of Koshi's Slope playbook, I think the only advice I would give to anyone is focus on your Lego block. So there's so much to do when it comes to building digital public infrastructure. It's not possible to kind of replicate all of it in one go. But pick your sweet spot, identify which block you're really solving a pain point for, and go all out. Because if that block is really solving for something, it will be relevant to all of us in the room.
Thank you, Bert. I think that is the perfect segue to the audience. Any questions? So, do we have a mic that's for Gaurav? Tani.
Hi, good morning. Longish question to Vibhor. See, we've seen all of these networks spawning in specific domains, like Namayatra in auto rickshaw or Kochi mobility in certain other areas. But there are larger problems to solve like multimodal mobility. For example, if Karnataka in Bangalore, if Ola, Rapido, Uber, taxis, KSRTCs, and Namayatri were to come together. It would have been a much more disruptive mechanism, so to speak. Now, how do you make this happen, in the absence of a formal structured governor or an orchestrator? Because there's only so much that can happen inside out. There has to be a push, and there has to be some kind of mechanism to govern this so that a widespread, full-scale adoption across domains can happen. So what's your thought on this?
Cool. So I think the way we think is actually the opposite of it, right? That the orchestrator should not be playing that role and let the market innovate, right? Because ultimately, when you're looking at hundreds and thousands of domains live on such networks, there is only that much that the orchestrator can enable, right? And ultimately, the real innovations will come in from the participants or from the Lego blocks, which, Bert spoke about, right? Today, if you look at it, right, yes, there were starting points for each of these segments we spoke about, right? So Namayatri, Yari, and others came on the network. But today, if you look at the state of the network, multimodal is a true possibility, right? You have Chennai Metro, which is live on the network. You have auto rickshaws live on the network. You have cabs live on the network. And there are players who are innovating to say, how can I stitch the entire multimodal journey today, right? So obviously, it's a journey, right? There would be pieces of the Lego block which came in early. So maybe auto rickshaw came in first. A few weeks back, Metro came in. And now that stitching is happening off those journeys, right? I think Pramod also just spoke about the entire cascaded transaction where you're buying a product and the second transaction being purchasing logistics on the network, right? Those are things that are already happening on the network. And again, the best innovations can happen from startups or the Lego blocks that are coming in and enabling and powering those networks, right? So that's where we sort of, say that we don't want to play that role because ultimately if we start restricting or controlling things, then the entire innovation will go for a toss.
If I can just add to that, what if in the state which you called out, there are multiple LPs who go and onboard different transport operators, but there's one kind of buyer app who goes and builds a single experience saying multimodal in the state. It's now possible, right? You don't need one guy to solve both sides.
But if you're thinking about traveling faster in Bangalore, God bless.
Hi, I'm Srivatsan Krishna. I'm the former IT Secretary of Karnataka. I'm now at Stanford writing a paper on DPIs. Two questions. One for Vibhor. Are we trying to help ONDC resolve this whole issue of fallback liability? But government does have a problem when consumer associations go to a network like ONDC and say, if you're not willing to accept any liability, that creates a problem. And that's where Koshi is stuck. Are we trying? But government side, there's a very strong pushback at the government of India level on fallback liability. Is there any other solution you can think of? And one question to either of you on unbundling value. The whole thing about DPIs is to unbundle value. The organization which unbundled value phenomenally was NPCI. But there comes a point when NPCI is now approached government, say, please charge fees. Allow us to charge fees. This is not sustainable. So you will also reach a point when you will say this free business won't work. Let's go back, charge fees. Government is putting a condition saying, okay, charge fees, plow it back into the system to improve it. That is not acceptable to the phone pays and Google pays of the world. How do you resolve this? These are fundamental issues which are holding up the spread of DPIs. Thanks.
So if I look at the fallback liability issue, obviously it's a larger issue pending with the regulators right now, not just for any networks, but for platforms as well. The new e-commerce policy is awaited. And obviously, let's see what view the government takes on that. That's the overarching framework under which any platform or any network will have to operate, right? So if that changes, obviously, things fall in place. That's one view. The second view is let's understand what is happening on the network. I think it's important to understand, right? While the responsibilities are getting split, right? And I think Sudhir spoke about the micro contracts, right? Where the micro contracts are clearly defining what responsibilities each of the actors in the transaction are playing. And therefore, and different what of each of those terms are well defined in a real-time micro contract which gets enabled on the network, right? Now that's a single source of truth which all parties have agreed to. The beauty of such networks is when you have information symmetry happening at every point, every node of the network, right? Disputes actually get resolved much faster in terms of any disputes arising on the network. It could be any issue, it could be any glance, it could be any dispute. What's important as an orchestrator for us to ensure is that there are adequate rails to ensure information symmetry, which is authentic, which is non-repudiable. I think that's a simple source of truth which helps resolve the issues and grievances in a much faster way, right? We've already engaged with a lot of regulators, and I think there have been some early bills as well out there in terms of, the GST authorities, the income tax authorities, coming back to the clarifications to say, in an unbundled environment where you have multiple e-commerce entities involved in the transaction, where do some of the responsibilities sit? And those discussions are on with other regulators also to understand, how would they pan out. So I think, yes, it's early days. It's not a perfect network, but yes, there are efforts being made to say, how do we resolve some of these issues that you're bringing up?
I think to your next question, so I'll put it across this way, that look, when we are talking about unlocking value, it doesn't mean it has to be free, right? Because unlocking value, of course, leads to many other possibilities coming into play, which can increase the size of the business that one can do by virtue of that, any kind of a player in this context. Having said that, see, the PhonePays or the Paytms of the world are not the only players out there. Actually, there are many more, right? In fact, I can speak in the context of ONEST, ONDC, of course, Vibhor can speak about. We actually did not start with going after the guys like PhonePay and Paytm, etc. at the beginning of ONEST, on purpose. The reason being that we chose to go after the blue and the grey collar workers and their families in terms of, what benefits can ONEST seek to. And guess what? The PhonePays or the Paytms haven't penetrated them well. They themselves, would love to get onto a network which widens their reach. And if that lowers the cost of customer acquisition for a PhonePay or a Paytm, they would love to actually play that game. So I think, so when we talk about unlocking value, the thing has to be also viewed from the perspective is, what is in it for a player which really unlocks value for them, which they were doing for a certain quantum of money today, but can happen a lot, at a lot cheaper rate. I think once that equation is solved, this question of people paying a certain transaction fee goes out of the way.
Is to make sure that we never get into a trend-seeking behavior at large, right? We are a section company, a not-for-profit. A very lean setup just to ensure that we are only building the core rails and the ecosystem around it is to be doing the heavy lifting in terms of building the network and sort of, taking that network forward, right? So again, I think there are various models that exist, and I think we are trying to sort of, put a standard out there in terms of saying this could be one of the models out there. But yes, the principles are very, very well set. There should be no right-seeking behavior at scale as well. And therefore, keep it very lean, keep it more of an orchestrator, and, that should take care of it. So the question that comes in is, and let's take an example out here, just for our discussion purpose. Why shouldn't the cost of my technology rates be a factor of what's getting traded or, sold as a value of a particular transaction, right? Now, whether I'm buying a auto rickshaw, right, or I'm buying an iPhone, my technology cost doesn't change with that, right? And therefore, when you're building a public infrastructure for scale, you have to keep some of those core processes or the principles in mind to say how will it ensure fairness to everyone from various perspectives, right? It's almost like saying, charts of a higher income tax versus a slower one. There are various models in which you can do that. The West is using regulation or such sort of, rules to enforce that. I think India is taking a different approach. India is saying, can I leverage technology to enable the same outcomes, right? So I think that's where the focus is, that let's not go into the regulatory mode, but let's look at technology, and can technology enable the same set of outcomes, which, at scale would be much more acceptable from a long-term standpoint.
We are actually way over time, and I'm glad that this was hopefully a very interesting discussion for the audience as well. We do have the tea break and lunch break where you can interact further with the panelists. With this, I'll end the panel. Thank you so much.